Hi, this is Todd Baker, your certified mortgage planner. And in this video, I'm going to discuss seller paid closing costs. So one really cool feature about a home loan, all the different loan types and loan programs allow for a certain percentage of the purchase price to be used to pay towards your closing costs. And so, for example, on a conventional loan, there's a minimum of 3% up to 9% of the purchase price that can use to be covered closing. On an FHA and USDA, those are two government loan programs, it can go up to 6% of the purchase price, and VA allows up to 4% of the purchase price. So to give you an example, let's say you were doing a $200,000 loan and you would do a conventional or any of the loan programs and ask for 3% towards closing. That means that on a $200,000 purchase, that would be $6,000 that the seller can give you to pay for closing. Now, there's several things to understand about this. Number one, it's a great way to get your closing costs covered. If you have an opportunity to have the seller pay your closing costs, you should always take it. Let me explain though what that means from the seller's point of view. If a seller is selling a $200,000 house and is willing to pay $6,000 towards closing, that means they're only going to net $194 because they're selling it for $2, but they're giving you $6. What's left over is $194. So there's several things to understand about that. That means you theoretically, if they're willing to give you a $6,000 towards closing, that means they would also be willing to take $6,000 off the price and not paying it for your closing. What I could tell you though, as a mortgage planner doing this for almost 20 years, in almost all cases, it makes better sense to allow the seller to pay your closing and leave that cash in your pocket and just pay full price for the house. They get a slight discount on the house. The usual difference in that scenario, the difference in monthly payment would probably be about $20 a month. If you divide the $6,000 in cash by the $20, you can see that it would take, usually it's 15 to 20 years to recapture the cash that you saved off the purchase price versus if you just had them pay for your closing. So the first point is it almost always makes sense, unless you're just going to live in the house for like a year and you're just buying it because you don't like to rent. There are some caveats to that. But that's very rare that that's the situation. Usually you're going to live in a house 5 to 7 years or more, so always have the seller pay closing. But the second thing is, from a negotiating point of view, the seller might not want to pay closing. So if you need for the seller to pay closing in order to make a deal work, you are going to have to find a house in which the seller is willing to negotiate with you to pay those closing costs. Because what happens in a seller's market, which right now in Texas, we're still in a big time seller's market, but this is true of any state and any local market in which it's still a very healthy seller's market. When you go to buy the house, if there's multiple offers on the property, you don't want to be asking for the seller to pay your closing costs, because that means that you have the weaker offer. They're going to get less money from your offer. They're not going to take it. So it's all sort of depends on your situation in the house. If you have a house that's overpriced, or you have a house that's been sitting on the market and for whatever reason just hasn't sold, there's opportunities there. And that's why you want to be working with a great real estate agent and a great lender that can help you through that process and make that determination. So that's the scoop on seller pay closing. They can absolutely pay can absolutely pay your closing costs. And oh, by the way, I mentioned that on some like VA is 4%, USDA and FHA goes up to 6%. It's almost never that your closing costs are going to be that high of a percent of the loan unless you do a smaller loan amount. So, it's very easy to cover almost all the closing costs on any of these scenarios if you can get them from the seller. So I hope you found that helpful. I'm always here to answer your questions, and I hope you have a great day.